Let's talk about the Russia investigation. A confidential memo that is now in the hands of Robert Mueller gives behind-the-scenes details about President Trump's decision on why exactly he fired James Comey last year. I want to bring in Jeremy Peters from the New York Times, Seth Waxman, former federal prosecutor, and Elise Jordan back with me. This one's a wow. So, Jeremy, walk us through this. Within the past hour, we got this choice tweet from the president. Quote, "Not that it matters, but I never fired James Comey because of Russia!" Exclamation point. The corrupt mainstream media loves to keep pushing that narrative, but they know it's not true. So here's the thing. We don't have to push anything. 1 year ago, here's what the President of the United States, on record, on TV, told Lester Holt.
He made a recommendation, but regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
This Russia thing, how does Trump possibly now completely reverse that story? This seems like a soundbite that's haunting the West Wing.
Facts are stubborn things, and this president only likes to adhere to those facts, mention those facts that conform with his narrative of persecution everywhere he looks, persecution within the government that he leads, from the quote-unquote deep state that has been spying on his presidential campaign and is now out to undo his presidency and cost his party seats in the midterm election.
And we should just note that both
Congress.
Mike Pompeo and Chris Wray have dismissed this notion of the deep state, and those are two Trump-appointed guys.
Yeah, as has Trey Gowdy, somebody who until recently was very well regarded on the right for being a man of the law, for somebody who respects law enforcement institutions and understands the proper role that Congress plays in investigating the executive branch. Now, one of the interesting things here, Stephanie, is you know, when President Trump evidently asked for this reference to Russia in that letter about firing Comey, he wanted the government once again to function as his own personal PR machine. And this goes to how President Trump views institutions in the United States. They are not there to serve the people, they are there to serve him, and the people who run those institutions are, most importantly, there to protect him.
Oh, goodness. Well, Seth, could this potentially get Rod Rosenstein in trouble?
Well, I think what we're seeing is two Rod Rosensteins. We have the Rod Rosenstein of today,
who's a
staunch defender of the Mueller investigation and the rule of law, going as far as to saying the Justice Department won't be extorted. And then the Rod Rosenstein of a year ago, who is struggling like Don McGahn to figure out why James Comey's being fired. Mr. McCabe now thinking that, of course, he was part of a cover-up. I think we have to know a lot more before concluding that Rod Rosenstein intentionally tried to mislead. But I think what it does tell us is that Rod Rosenstein has moved much further away from the president in the last year. Now, not as much giving him the benefit of the doubt and allowing the Mueller investigation to go forward.
I guess that's how he doubles. If you call him Rosenstein, he's one guy. Stein, he's another. What's your takeaway, Lise?
My takeaway is that Donald Trump has a lot of agency here. He would rather play the victim card, but he could, you know, choose to unilaterally declassify anything in the investigation. He could choose to fire Jeff Sessions. He could choose to fire Rod Rosenstein, but he isn't choosing to do so, and he would rather play this narrative out in the public sphere of his victimization by law enforcement officials and the media.
Okay, well, Seth, given that Rosenstein is overseeing the investigation, should he now recuse himself, since it sounds as though he's a potential witness?
Yeah, I mean, I know there's that line of thought out there, and I think if Mr. Trump himself hadn't gone on record for his reasoning for firing James Comey, clearly saying, you know, in the Lester Holt interview that it was at least part and parcel because of the Russia investigation, that would put Mr. Rosenstein's information kind of more squarely within the investigation. But as a former federal prosecutor, when you have the words from the horse's mouth, you know, whether there are 2 or 3 or 4 other individuals down the line that may echo those same thoughts, to me, it doesn't put them kind of squarely into the investigation, given that the subject, or maybe eventually target of that investigation, has already pronounced his reasoning for doing it.
Okay, notes. Jeremy, it was reported last year that McCabe took notes about his interactions with Trump. We know Comey did too, and Trump responded to that back in March, tweeting, "Spent very little time with Andrew McCabe, but he never took notes when he was with me. I don't believe he made memos except to help his own agenda, probably at a later date. Same with lying James Comey." Can we call them fake memos? I mean, how does the president possibly say he didn't take notes? He didn't need to take notes in front of the president.
Right. This is just more of the president's effort, the team around President Trump with his legal team now, led by Rudy Giuliani, to discredit the investigators, portray this all as a conspiracy led by the deep state. Now, I will point out, Stephanie, that I think that the dialogue around a lot of this changes in the next week or so when we get that Inspector General report from the Justice Department. And Andrew McCabe is likely to be a focus of that report in some regard. Now, that is going to look into how the Clinton email investigation was handled, and subsequently the Russia investigation that came later on. That is likely to be critical of the Justice Department in several key respects. It also could be exculpatory for certain individuals. We don't quite know yet exactly what it's going to say, but I would expect that the storyline a week from now looks quite different around this.
It could be very different in 6 hours from now. As President Trump said earlier this morning, it's going to be a really fun day.